This is a 2025 Volkswagen Taos SEL, an updated version of Volkswagen's smallest crossover SUV that first arrived in 2022. We now get more power, new colors, and, of course, new technology inside. My name is Robin Warner, and I'm going to show you around and inside this car in detail, as well as drive it around a variety of roads to show you how it feels. The SEL is the top of 4 trims offered on the Taos above the S, SE, and SE Black trims. It's also the only trim that comes standard with all-wheel drive. The other 3 come standard with front-wheel drive. So, how does this updated small SUV feel? Is it worth the money? Let's find out. I review all kinds of cars, and I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. The base price of a Volkswagen Taos S with front-wheel drive is $26,920. For the S, SE, and SE Black trims, adding all-wheel drive costs an additional $1,700. Going with the SEL raises the price to $36,620. Yeah, nearly 10 grand. And my test car does include an optional and new for 2025 color and costs $37,075. All right, with that, now is a good time for me to pull over and show you around and inside and under the hood of this updated Taos. Looking at the front of the Taos, it definitely still looks largely similar, but there are a few updates. It's got a more modern looking front end, tiny bit more adventurous as well. This big blocky chunks here for the lower grille, which is basically the entire grille. A lot of this is blanked out, but it is open down low. And then we do have the silver streak to go and contrast the gloss black that we see otherwise. And we have more gray to silver. It's kind of in between on top there. And then these interesting little openings here to be an upper grille of sorts before you get to the large and in charge Volkswagen logo and the headlights that become a light bar that go full width of the front of the car. Now, this light bar is on the SE Black and the SEL trims, not every one, but looks quite nice. Obviously, you can't see what it looks like lit up during the day. Let me show you at night. But what I want to show you is under the hood, more power. Well, there you have it, your turbocharged 1.5 liter inline 4-cylinder engine, 174 horsepower, and 184 pound-feet of torque. The front axle center line is about here, about midway through the battery here, which means only about half the engine is in front of the front axle center line, which means this is pretty well tucked back and more centered than most front wheel drive based engines are. This is of course transversely mounted or side to side like that, which means the transaxle is right here. So yeah, that aids weight distribution a little bit, makes me a little bit more optimistic about how this chassis will feel on the road. And of course, the windshield washer fluid, which is right up front on the driver's side, right here. Looking at the car in profile, this gives you a nice look at the new for 2025 bright moss green metallic paint. It is a $455 optional color, but does look lovely. Overall though, this is a pretty short car. I will go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen for you to see and let you know that I have a lot more information in the description. The base Tiguan gets a 17-inch alloy wheel, but the top line SEL gets these 19-inch wheels, and they look lovely with the polished metal right at the front with this gloss black just behind it. Overall, I'm happy to see the Volkswagen didn't go too big with the wheels, although I think an 18 might even fit a little bit better for this size crossover, but you still have a little bit of sidewall to work with. It's not overwrought in my opinion. And yes, this is a crossover SUV. The wheels and tires in back are the same size as what's in front. Looking at the rear of the Taos, again, this is very familiar, but there are a couple of little differences. The taillights bake right into this piece here, and it goes straight across the full width of the car again. And the Volkswagen logo is illuminated. Can't tell during the day, of course. Let me show you that at night. Lift the tailgate and you get 25 cubic feet of storage behind the second row. You also have a nice wide floor. If you lift the floor, you see that you have a real spare tire. It is a space saver spare, but we do also have a little bit of extra storage put in around the spare to use if you need that, and then the jack and those types of things are on the passenger side. If you need more than 25 cubic feet of storage and only have you and a passenger, that is easy to do. Pull a couple of levers and pull down the seats and you have 60 cubic feet of storage, and I would say plenty of room for my bike, but let's find out. So it's not quite as long as it looks. You're a little bit tight on space in terms of length, but you do have plenty of width to work with, and the floor is nice and wide, so yeah, easily swallows my bike, and you still have plenty of room for two. Yeah, useful little ute, this thing. All right, let's take a look inside. Despite it being a subcompact crossover, there is actually a generous amount of space for the second row. This is the gray and black interior color, by the way, and pretty dark, but I'm very happy for the gray accents to give just a little bit of brightness to the interior, just make it feel just a little bit more welcoming. I am 5 feet 11 inches or 181 centimeters tall, and I have several inches of knee room. I have nice and high seat bottoms for good thigh support, and I even have headroom, lots of it. And that's despite having this panoramic moonroof right here. So yeah, really impressed with the amount of space in here for people. This is great. There's not too much back here. We do have a single USB Type-C port right there, but we do also have an armrest with cup holders. So yeah, plenty spacious back here for adults. I could do a road trip back here, no problem at all. All right, to the front. There is more of that gray and black on this door right here, as well as the usual controls you see on a steering wheel. Being the top trim, we do have power seat adjustment in the Taos, and that does include lumbar support, which is always appreciated. By the way, because this is an SEL, we do also have leather upholstery on the seating. That's a nice touch. Push button starts right here. Gonna let this car start cooling off. The steering wheel itself is a nice small diameter wheel with a flat bottom right here and a pretty thick rim for good support. We do also have these thicker parts around the thumb. We do also have several controls on either side, including media adjustments, cruise control options, and more adjustments, including for this 10.25 inch fully digital instrument cluster and a heated steering wheel as well. Even better, the heated steering wheel is standard equipment. This 10.25 instrument cluster, however, is on the SE and higher trims. It's an 8-inch screen on the base S Taos. Next to that, we actually have a smaller 8-inch center display screen, and this is standard across the board, but features are added to it as the trim level goes up, and the SEL is the only one that gets navigation built into it. Speaking of features, on SE and higher trims, you do also get wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. On the standard S, that is wired. And it operates quickly enough, not too much lag or anything like that. It responds to your inputs pretty quickly. But you can see it's a little bit out of date when it comes to graphics and screen resolution and those types of things. Beneath that, we do have dual zone climate control, which comes on the SE and higher trims. We also have heated front seats. Those come on the S with all-wheel drive and higher trims, but we also have ventilated seats. Those are reserved for the SEL trim. And below that, tucked back here, you see 2 more USB Type-C ports and an old school 12-volt port right there. There it is. But this floor right here, this is a wireless charge pad for your smartphone. That is on SE and higher trims as well. There's another look at our start-stop button. Nice and standard looking Prindle. Our electric park brake right there. Auto stop, start, shut off right there. Parking signal, and all our drive modes. I'll get to that in just a moment. Just past that, we have a couple of cup holders and a nice little tray right here, and then center console storage right down there. It's not large, but it is nice and deep. Looking up, we have controls for the panoramic view moonroof right here. Now, there's a separate set of switches right here just for the privacy panel, and hey, it's lovely. All right, let's talk drive modes. Drive modes only come on the all-wheel drive versions of the Taos, but you do get snow. And when you're in normal mode, you can press down this button right here to choose between Eco, Normal, Sport, and Custom. And you can see what can be adjusted here. Not that much, there's no adjustable suspension or anything like that. But then you can go to the off-road modes, and you have Off-Road Auto and Off-Road Custom, and then again you can adjust it. We will be spending all of our time in the on-road driving mode, but we'll play around, see what Eco, Normal, and Sport offer us. To do that, we have to get back to the drive, so let's get back to the drive. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. Where does 174 horsepower and 184 horsepower come from? Well, as I showed you under the hood, it is a turbocharged 1.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, and 174 horsepower is actually 17 more horsepower than the Taos had in 2022. Peak torque does stay the same. To achieve this, Volkswagen did a fair amount of things to the engine. They updated the piston rings, they enlarged the intercooler, and they added new fuel injectors. That's actually in addition to a few other small things. Also, this is a turbocharged engine with an 11.5-to-1 compression ratio. That's quite high, except not exactly. That's actually an 11.5-to-1 expansion ratio because Volkswagen is using the Miller cycle for this engine, which is basically like a supercharged / turbocharged version of the Atkinson cycle, and that means that you don't get the full 11.5-to-1 compression ratio. That does limit the total power that the engine can make, but the power that it does make, it makes more efficiently. Another interesting aspect of this engine is it has a much longer stroke than bore, and that aids getting a nice high torque number. And in addition to that, this engine happily makes all its power in all those fun ways that it does it with regular gasoline. Every Taos gets this exact same engine, and every Taos gets the exact same 8-speed automatic transmission. It's not the fastest shifting engine, but it does shift very smoothly. And as I mentioned, the base drivetrain for the Taos is front-wheel drive, but the SEL comes standard with all-wheel drive. And when you get all-wheel drive, it can transfer up to 50% of the torque to the rear axle. Even with the all-wheel drive system, it defaults to be front-wheel drive unless it senses any amount of slip or the anticipation of slip, and then it will very quickly transfer torque to the rear axle to distribute the power. And generally speaking, I'm pretty darn happy with this engine. Even though we're going uphill, if I floor the accelerator, takes a moment to kick down, but then I do get decent pull. The turbocharged and the long stroke engine does give me a lot of grunt early on, even in the lower revs. Considering that this is a turbocharged engine, the power delivery is pretty darn linear. And that was in the normal driving mode. If I first switch it to sport and floor it again, I'll be honest, it feels pretty similar. There's not a huge difference in the amount of time it takes to kick down and stuff like that, but the pull is good. However, I can put the transmission in S instead of D. That oftentimes speeds up the transmission shifts. Let's try that. Okay, sport driving mode, transmission in S, floor the accelerator. Yeah, pretty solid, but honestly, pretty similar. What we have is a good powertrain but not big differences between the different drive modes in the powertrain. To be fair, this is just the sub-drive mode, you could say. There is the snow driving mode and also 2 different off-road driving modes. Those different modes probably have a bigger impact on how the transmission shifts, the throttle map, and the characteristics of the engine response. The good news is that the powertrain is generally responsive, smooth, and pretty powerful considering the class of vehicle we're talking about. I personally do wish that the shifts were a little bit faster, and I would happily give up some smoothness, but the shifts are smooth, and it generally chooses the right gear I want. I just wish it got there a little bit faster. Honestly, that behavior probably does help fuel economy, and in this car, it's pretty good. You get 25 miles to the gallon in the city, 33 miles to the gallon on the highway, 28 combined. Considering that this is no hybrid anything and all-wheel drive, I would say that's pretty solid, and you can do better if you get the front-wheel drive version of the Taos. I'll go ahead and put those numbers up on the screen for you to see right now. But while fuel economy is very important, it's not nearly as much fun as accelerating, and of course I had to test that. Let me show you right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the Taos in the sport driving mode. I also have electronic stability control in the sport mode, and I have the transmission in S instead of D. So putting it all together, we'll see how it goes. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Floor the accelerator. Come on. There we go. Yep. Pretty smooth shift. Another smooth shift. Not the fastest shifts, but yeah, decent pull. You know, I gotta say, that's actually pretty decent pull considering the category of car we're talking about here. Subcompact mainstream crossover SUV that gets up and moves pretty well. We have kind of a soft launch. I did try brake torquing before and that got no advantage, so the launch itself is pretty soft and the shifts are on the slow side but very smooth. Otherwise, the pull is strong and the pull keeps going even as you get to higher speeds. Overall, solid acceleration. All right, let's dig into the chassis. We do have the most common chassis setup for a car like this. Struts up front, a multi-link suspension in back. It is 4-wheel independent. However, it's only 4-wheel independent because it's all-wheel drive. The front-wheel drive versions of the Taos have a torsion beam rear axle. Those are very space efficient, low cost, but solid rear axles, which does hurt its feeling over bumpy roads. The torsion beam does also merit more space, and as a result, the front-wheel drive versions of the Taos actually have more cargo space than the all-wheel drive versions. The all-wheel drive versions also have more than an inch of additional ground clearance compared to the front-wheel drive Taos. Front-wheel drive versions are barely higher than a sedan, 6.5 inches. The all-wheel drive version, 7.6 inches. And that helps give you much better approach, departure, and breakover angles. I'll go ahead and put those numbers up on the screen for you to see. Finally, even the wheelbase is a little bit different between the front-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive versions of this crossover. The front-wheel drive is a little bit longer, 105.9 inches versus 105.5 for this all-wheel drive version. So, everything I'm about to say about the ride and the handling of this Taos does come with the caveat of it's kind of sort of all-wheel drive only. With all that said, this definitely does lean on the ride side of the ride and handling spectrum. Just turning the wheel. I mean, it's a fast steering rack to be sure, but we get a fair amount of body roll as we go. You get a fair amount of lean when you turn the wheel. That said, it is more responsive than I would have guessed. And that makes sense when you really start leaning into it in the corners. It responds well, but the overall grip is low and you're leaning over a fair amount. The happy side of that, again, is the ride. This is a nice and comfortable ride. Very soft, floats over bumps and lumps of the road without any trouble, handles potholes and abrupt shifts like expansion joints with no trouble at all. It's quite comfortable in here. That's true on roads like this and on the interstate. I did give it a test there as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate, and I do have the on-ramp to myself, so a quick little handling test. Not tons of grip, but good Volkswagen feel to be sure. It was easy to feel the limit. It was easy to play around the limit, so that part of it was good, kind of like a tall Golf. Okay, cruise control is set at 78 miles an hour to go with traffic, and I do have all the driver assist systems on. I will go ahead and put that list up on the screen for you to see what we've got. We've got a fair amount. Most of it is standard, but because this is an SEL, we do have a couple of extra things, and that does include travel assist, which means I can take my hand off the wheel and it will stay in the center of the lane as we go around the curve, and it is following pretty well. When I first took my hands off the wheel, we veered straight for a moment, and then the system had to catch up, but once it did, it kept us centered in the lane pretty well. Travel assist is kind of like Hyundai and Kia's highway driving assist, kind of combines adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and all that into one little system, and it works pretty well. It is a hands-on system, so this is not anything like Super Cruise or Blue Cruise. More fundamentally, the engine is spitting right around 2,000 RPM. We are in a fair amount of traffic, so we're going 69 miles an hour at 2,000 RPM, and you know, cabin isolation for this class of car, I would say, is competitive. We do have a fair amount of road noise. We do have a little bit of wind noise. There is this gushing, whooshing sound I'm hearing over here. It kind of seems like it's at the top of the A-pillar, or maybe at the base of the A-pillar, but it is definitely quiet. It's in the distance, and it is a lower pitch, so it's not too distracting. We did have a fair amount of body roll on that quick handling test around the on-ramp, but it is a very comfortable ride as a result. And on top of that, the seats are comfortable, the center display is easy to use, and the digital instrument cluster is easy to see. We have reached 78 miles an hour, and that's right around 2,200 RPM at 78 miles an hour. And the space in the second row is definitely well above average for this class of car. Overall, I think this would be a solid road trip car, just, you know, not the quietest one. So, what do I think of this updated 2025 Volkswagen Taos? Well, I think it looks really nice. I think it offers a lot of space, and I think it offers a lot of luxury as well. I was quite pleased with the comforts that it offered an adult-sized person in the second row. Nice high seat bottoms, plenty of leg room. For 4 adults in this car, it would be perfectly comfortable. So this is a very well done crossover ergonomically, to be sure. And I quite like the level of luxury, the amenities you get in this. The center display is on the small side for the modern era, and the graphics are a little bit behind the newest stuff. But it functions well, and it does offer a lot of functionality. You also get a heated steering wheel, heated front seats, and ventilated front seats. Nice warm summer day, I'm using the ventilated seats right now. The seats themselves are wrapped in a soft leather, and they're quite comfortable. We also have this panoramic moonroof. As far as the drive is concerned, it's competitive for this class of vehicle, but not class leading. That said, the powertrain is above average in this class. It operates quietly, smoothly, and delivers decent power. It's a little bit noisy in the cabin, but given everything else, I think that Volkswagen did a really good job with the Taos. Even though it's a little bit on the high side for price, it's still in the competitive area of the high side, and you do really get a lot. So I think a small family, or even empty nesters that like to take friends around, could find a lot of use for this new Taos. And in that sense, it's well worth the money. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you very much for watching.